Well, good morning. My name is William Austin, and welcome to the Morning Report. Good news. The Bureau of Economic Analysis dropped its initial estimate for gross domestic product, or GDP, in the third quarter of 2025. And the headline is an attention-getting grabbing. Real GDP grew at an annualized rate of 4.3%. That's not weak. That's not sluggish. And by historical standards, that's strong growth. But as always, the headline tells only a part of the story. The real question isn't whether the economy grew, it's why it grew, and what's holding it up, and what's quietly pulling back beneath the surface. Because when you look beyond the top line number and into the composition of growth, what you find is not a booming, confident economy, but one that's running on momentum, caution, and government spending. Now, this is not a government in crisis, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it's also not an economy that fully trusts its own future. We got to be clear. 4.3% GDP growth is a solid number. It's stronger than quarter two's 3.8%. And well beyond what many economists consider the long-term sustainable growth rate for the US. If this was being reported in isolation, you'd hear words like resilient and robust and strong fundamentals. And technically, those words wouldn't be wrong. But GDP is not a single engine. It's a sum of a bunch of moving parts. And some of those parts are humming while others are just sitting quietly idling. According to the BEA, the increase in GDP was driven primarily by consumer spending, because consumers remain the backbone of the US economy. And quarter three confirmed that reality once again. Spending on services, healthcare, travel, recreation, housing-related costs continue to rise. Americans are still buying. Americans are still traveling, still paying. We are still living our lives. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily we feel all that good about it. It means that people are adapting. Inflation-trained consumers keep moving even when prices sting. This isn't less enthusiasm. This is less enthusiasm and more endurance. We're just making it happen. We got to keep living our lives. Number two, exports. Exports also contributed positively to growth, signaling that global demand for US goods and services remains intact, despite all the stuff that's going on internationally. People still want our stuff. The world is still buying American output. The world still wants our stuff. Number three, this is the one we don't necessarily like. Federal government spending. Federal, state, and local governments spending increased again, especially at the federal level. And this matters because government spending doesn't just supplement growth. It can mask weaknesses elsewhere. So when private investment hesitates, government dollars can keep the GDP number afloat. That doesn't mean that the growth is fake, but that does mean that it's being propped up. Right. Here's something that we need to watch out for. Okay? We're looking forward. We need to make sure that we pay attention to this. Private investment has pulled back. Private investment actually declined in quarter three. And that includes things like business equipment purchases, structures, some inventory adjustments. This is the most important signal in the entire report. Business when they are confident in the future. They hold back when uncertainty rises. And now corporate America is sending a clear message. We're making money, but we're not sure we like what's coming next. And then I think this has been something that's been going on for a while because it's not panic. Believe me, this is not panic. This is not, oh, because you're hearing less and less of that now. Oh, we're heading into a recession. Oh, Trump, yeah, right? It's just caution. Pump the brake. And caution doesn't show up in unemployment numbers until much later. Corporate profits are still strong, but are indeed under pressure. The BEA's preliminary data on corporate profits shows that profits remain elevated, but the pace of growth is uneven and margins are tightening in certain sectors. Costs that are rising. Labor. It's more expensive. Have you noticed that it's more expensive to hire folks now? And those of you who hire people, write in the comments, is it more expensive to hire people, to bring people on? Is it more important to finance, to borrow money? Regulatory compliance. In the second part of this big, beautiful bill, it needs to, it really needs to address regulatory compliance. I did a short about insurance. Insurance is a problem, leading to long-term capital risk. Now, companies are not collapsing, but they are no longer just expanding with confidence. Everybody is being very careful about the next move. And this destroys two lazy narratives at once. The idea that corporations are struggling across the board. They are not. They're not. And the idea that corporations are gouging, effortlessly. They are not. Reality, like always, sits somewhere in the middle. And you haven't heard the R word, have you? Because this clearly isn't a recession. And why that's important. Let's say it clearly. This is not a recession economy. Let me say it one more time. Wait. This is not a recession economy. So even if you don't see me running around grabbing the flag and running around in this video, I am not by any stretch of the imagination signaling that this is a recession economy, because it's not. Because you don't get a 4.3% real GDP growth during a recession. Just don't happen. Employment remains relatively strong. Consumer spending continues. Profits are there. Exports are functioning. But this isn't always, this isn't always isn't in a carefree growth environment. It isn't. And pretending it would just be dishonest. This is a very cautious growth economy, which probably really is probably one of the better ideas. Because if you can expand cautiously and smart and intelligently, maybe that keeps you from falling off the edge. Maybe this is the way that we should always go. This is a confident economy, and confidence is conditional. The most important takeaway from Q3 2025 isn't growth, this is psychology. Consumers are spending because we got to. Businesses are cautious because they don't trust Congress. Government is spending because, well, hell, that's what it always does. The combination usually signals an economy that's stable in the short term, but there may be some fragility in the long term. When investments pause, future productivity pauses with it. So if you don't invest now, if you don't buy the equipment, if you don't open the factories, well, later on, when you might need those, that doesn't happen either. So when confidence stalls, growth will eventually follow. All right, here's what's going to happen. Because here's what Washington gets wrong. Every politician and people like me tend to cherry pick. Some will say the economy is booming. Look at that GDP. Others will say people are still struggling. Just ignore that number. Most miss the point. The economy can be growing and fragile at the same time. Numbers don't measure trust, they simply measure output. And output can continue even when confidence is being eroded. And why this matters going into the rest of the year? The report lands as the country heads towards a contentious midterm cycle. Economic narratives will shape turnout, messaging, and policy proposals. Now, if private investment doesn't rebound, wage growth will continue to slow. That makes sense? Job creation will eventually weaken, and productivity will eventually fade. And none of that's going to show up overnight. Economic downturns don't announce themselves, they creep in quietly long after the last strong quarter headline. Right? Quarter three, 2025 was a strong quarter built on costage foundations. Growth happened, but not because businesses are racing forward. Profits exist, but not without pressure. Consumers are spending because, and not because we're carefree. What I'm going to call this is a grown up economy. People are doing the smart thing and doing what they have to do. People are being adults. And this is an economy that's working, but it's watching its step because that's what grown-ups do. If this was a car, the engine is running smoothly, but the driver keeps checking the dashboard, the mirrors, the road ahead, and for a good reason. The numbers don't lie, but they do whisper. My name is Billy Lawson. This has been the Mona Report. Mona Report is a collection of fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com. And until we see you later, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, don't take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye bye now.